Now, Anthony Albanese has announced Labor's push for a net zero emissions target by 2050. Today, Matthias Cormann said this is reckless, although we know that some Liberal MPs are supporting this move. Let's have a look first at what Matthias Cormann said earlier today.
Well, again, I mean, what we've said very clearly is that we would never be as reckless and irresponsible as Anthony Albanese was, again, on Friday, imposing a target in Australia that, you know, ultimately just shifts emissions to other parts of the world where emissions would be higher for the same level of economic output, doesn't help solve the problem that we're wanting to solve, and just impose a sacrifice on people here in Australia for no environmental benefit whatsoever.
Zed Seselja, starting with you, what is your view on this net zero emissions target?
Well, I agree with Matthias Cormann. I think it is reckless. It's the sort of policy that you would expect perhaps from a minor party like the Greens, but not a party who claims to be a party of government. If you're going to put forward these targets, you've got a responsibility to tell the community, to tell the Australian people how much it would cost and how you would get there. And that's something that Bill Shorten wasn't able to do before the last election.
There are many Liberals who also, inside your government, want to adopt a similar target. What is the government's target actually going to be?
Well, we've got a 2030 target, which is on a per capita basis, around 50% emissions reductions, which is one of the highest per capita in the world. And looking beyond that, what we've said is we will set out our policies, which will include a focus on technology. And we are focusing on that technology right now, whether it's Snowy Hydro 2.0, whether it's the battery of the nation, whether it's investment in hydrogen. We are making those investments. We are seeing great progress, but you don't lead a nation in this policy area just with aspirational targets that you can't get to and could well have very, very significant economic impacts. And that's the fundamental problem the Labor Party faces. They took a very similar approach to the last election. It was rejected because the community didn't trust them because they wouldn't say how much their policies would actually cost.
Sarah Hanson-Young, would you support a net zero emissions target, whatever the cost to the economy or industry or jobs?
Well, it's where the world is going. We have over 70 other nations around the world who have accepted this target, including the Conservative government in the UK. So I don't think Zed can quite say that, you know, only minor parties would have this type of policy. In fact, governments around the world have this policy, including Conservative governments.
But Sarah, what about the cost to jobs and the need to protect jobs within Australia? Because we have tens of thousands of jobs that do rely on high-emitting industries.
Well, look, Sharri, I think that is where we need a proper plan for these jobs and for the people who are currently employed, because there's going to be lots of jobs that go if we don't get serious about climate change and we don't have a proper target to and a plan to reduce pollution. All of those jobs in the tourism industries, all of those jobs in agriculture as the drought continues to bite more and more frequently. You know, the cost of not taking action needs to be quantified as well. I see some economists over the last week have been suggesting that even the bushfires themselves this summer are going to cost the Australian economy up to $100 billion. Now, that's a lot of jobs, that's a lot of livelihoods, that's a lot of money, and we need to get serious about this. So I don't think it's, let me be clear, we need a plan to get to 2050. Just choosing the aspirational target and is not enough. We actually need a
well, that's the problem. No party seems to have a plan at this point.
Well,
and a way to deal with the cost to the economy either. I mean, that you know, Zed is right, and that is one of the big reasons why Labor lost the last election, was that it was uncosted.
Well, I think the problem for Labor is that they are trying to talk out both sides of their mouth. And that was the problem in the election. And unless they get serious about it going forward, they will continue to struggle to articulate the position and for people to believe them. And you can't, on one hand, say you commit to a 2050 zero net emissions target, but then say that somehow Australia is going to be able to keep exporting coal right up and beyond 2050. I mean, that is unreasonable, and And it's not logical.
And that is their position at this point. That
the world is going to, and they have to be honest about what they're going to do to invest in the transition of those workers and those jobs. Other countries are having this conversation. Australia isn't the only country in the world that is struggling with this. We need a global response, and Australia needs to be in there fighting for a response that will benefit our workers, our environment, and ultimately our economy, because we could use the world's targets and strategy to our gain if we were smart about it.
So, Sharri, I mean, I'm shocked actually that after only a few minutes I'm actually agreeing with some of what Sarah has said, and that is that the Labor Party are trying to have it both ways. They are claiming that they can be great warriors and set these targets which will perhaps win them some support in some parts of the country, whilst pretending that you don't have to outline how you're going to get there, that you don't have to outline the costs, that you don't have to outline what it's going to mean for jobs.
Zed, the pressure is also on the government, because the government hasn't said what it's going to do, whether it will have a target or whether it's going to have any sort of overarching emissions reduction scheme. Or Scott Morrison said he doesn't want to have an overarching emissions reduction scheme at all. But Zed Seselja, there are many people in the Liberal Party who are saying that the public attitude has shifted after this summer of bushfires, and that the people in their electorates are now telling them they want action on climate change. We've had Jason Falinski on my show last week come out and say there needs to be a net zero target. There's David Sharma supporting it, and also Trent Zimmerman, and those are just the people who've spoken out publicly. So, do you think, Zed, there has been a shift in public sentiment on this?
Well, there's a couple of things. You suggested that we haven't outlined a plan, and we've outlined a plan for both 2020 and 2030, and we've talked about the fact that looking beyond 2030, we will continue to build on that. But when it comes to the issues in the community, of course people are concerned about these issues. They're concerned about the environment, they're concerned about climate change, and they're concerned about the economy and jobs. All of these things are important, and that's why we're responding to all of the issues. And so when I've been having correspondence with people in the community over the summer, I've been outlining the fact that when it comes to investment in renewables, we have some of the highest levels of investment in the world. People talk about Germany as a leader in this space. Well, I think per capita about 3 times as much renewable investment as Germany in the last year.
I love hearing members of the Liberal Party speak out renewable energy.
Well, indeed, this is what we're doing. And so, Sharri, I would say to you that part of the argument, whether it's for colleagues who are making this case, is to put forward policy ideas, but also put forward what we are actually achieving, which is very substantial, and we've been able to do it whilst growing our economy and growing jobs, which is what people would expect and demand from a coalition government.